In a quiet Westlake mansion just outside Dallas, a millionaire CEO discovered that tools from his garden shed had gone missing, 3 times in just 2 weeks. Nothing worth a fortune, nothing anyone would pawn, but tools that shouldn't simply walk away. The system flagged the discrepancies, and suspicions settled on the one person who had nighttime clearance to the property, his elderly gardener, a man who had trimmed the hedges on that estate longer than most people held careers. The next evening, the CEO secretly followed him after work. What he found didn't expose a thief. It shook him to his core. Before we dive deeper into this story, tell me, where are you listening from? And don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story might just change the way you see people forever. John Avery Harper was not a man who overlooked details. At 41, he operated Harper and Row Development with the precision of a man controlling a high-voltage switchboard. Every day was scheduled to the minute. Every project moved on a track he personally inspected. His employees described him as brilliant, demanding, and distant but unshakably efficient. He didn't talk much, didn't smile much, and didn't waste time pretending to enjoy the parts of life he found unnecessary. He wasn't cruel. He simply functioned in a different weather system. On the morning everything began, John delivered the keynote at the Texas Infrastructure Summit. The applause rose cleanly through the auditorium as he stepped from the podium, his charcoal suit cutting sharp lines in the stage lights. His speech, centered on sustainable land use and zero-waste construction, was praised as concise, modern, and characteristically Harper. Reporters gravitated toward him like iron filings, snapping photos, gathering quotes. He nodded, offered a few clipped responses, then checked his watch and slipped out exactly 1 minute early. The drive home was silent. No music, no talk radio, not even background noise. John liked silence. It separated thought from distraction. On the center console, his tablet displayed live company metrics, budget drift lines, labor distribution charts, shipment delays, projected costs. Everything green. Everything controlled. Everything predictable. That's why the notification waiting for him at home unsettled him. When he entered the estate, the physical lights adjusted instantly, washing the hallway in warm gold. The front door recognized his phone and unlocked with a subtle click. Everything responded to him. Everything in the world John built followed rules. Except the alert blinking on his home management interface. 3 missing items. All from the garden shed. All logged on nights no one was supposed to be inside. He sat down in his home office, eyes narrowing. 2 pruning shears. 1 pair of insulated gloves. A box of nutrient soil packets. Not expensive, but unaccounted for. He tapped the access logs. There were only 5 names with clearance to that shed after dark: his own, his assistants, the security chiefs, the ground supervisors, and the old gardener who had worked for the property since John was 19. The name Sam Allen appeared on the log each night an item went missing. All between 9:40 p.m. and 10:10 p.m. John didn't react. He didn't raise an eyebrow. He simply stared at the screen the way he studied a blueprint, searching for the flaw in the structure. Sam was 74. Quiet. Slow-moving. A man whose back curved from decades of bending over soil. He spoke only when spoken to, nodded more than he talked, and always wore the same faded cap with the initials A&M embroidered on the brim. John had known Sam for 22 years the same way one knew a clock or the hum of a refrigerator, constantly present, rarely considered. Sam trimmed the lawn. Sam maintained the trees. Sam repaired the broken sprinkler heads without being asked. Sam wasn't the kind of man who stole. But the logs didn't care about the kind of man he was. The logs cared only about time and access. John closed the tablet and leaned back. Something unfamiliar pressed lightly against his ribs. Not anger, not betrayal. Something colder. Something weightless. A small break in a world he had built to be airtight. He stood by the office window and looked out over the estate. The garden lights glowed over the hedges like soft lanterns. Somewhere out there, Sam would be wrapping up for the day, sweeping the walkway, storing the tools exactly where they belonged inside the shed. Except now, maybe not. John didn't sleep well that night. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't overthinking. It wasn't that kind of restlessness. It was the kind that hides under the skin, steady, quiet, insistent. A pulse behind the ribs. A question refusing to dissolve. By the following afternoon, the feeling had sharpened into a choice. He cancelled his final meeting of the day. He told his driver he wouldn't need him. Then, just after 9:20 p.m., he pulled out of the estate in a dark grey sedan no one associated with him. He drove 3 blocks away, parked under a broken streetlight, and waited. At 9:41 p.m., Sam appeared from the side gate with his usual slow, deliberate gait. His cap was pulled low over his grey hair. A canvas bag rested over one shoulder, heavier than usual, almost bulging. John's eyes narrowed. Sam didn't drive. He walked to the corner bus stop, the one John had never once noticed despite living there for years. He didn't use a cane, but he moved like a man who probably should. John waited until Sam boarded the bus, then pulled out and followed from a distance. The bus headed south, leaving behind the manicured streets, the gated properties, the polished sidewalks. Street by street, the city changed. Lighting grew patchier. Storefronts worn. Houses smaller, older, the kind built before developers like John came and reshaped neighborhoods. Sam stepped off near an aging red brick apartment complex where the paint peeled like tired bark. He walked straight down a narrow alley, past a flickering lamp, and stopped before a small, low building with a dented metal door. John parked half a block away and got out. Cold air brushed his face as he approached quietly, staying in the shadows. A hand-painted sign hung above the entrance. Westbrook Community Garden and Food Support Room. Through the cracked window, John saw something he did not expect. Sam emptying the contents of his canvas bag onto a folding table. Dull garden shears. The gloves. The nutrient soil packets. But also fresh vegetables. Small pots of herbs. Seedlings wrapped in newspaper. Several children sat nearby, legs crossed, watching him with eager faces as he demonstrated how to replant seedlings into reused yogurt cups. A woman thanked him. Sam shook his head. "No need for thanks," he said softly. "Just trying to keep things growing." John stood frozen. This was not theft. This was something else entirely. Something he didn't yet have a word for. Something that would change everything he thought he knew about the man he had followed here tonight. John didn't move at first. He stood half-hidden behind a rusted fence, breath shallow, heart steady but shaken in a way he hadn't felt since he was a boy standing in the shadow of his father's casket. Through the narrow pane of glass, the scene inside the community room unfolded with a quiet tenderness he had never associated with Sam. The old gardener held a tiny seedling between his weathered fingers, the roots dangling like thin white threads. "This one's fragile," Sam told the kids, voice low but warm. "Needs a little extra care. But once it takes, it'll outlast half the plants in your yard." The children leaned forward, hanging on every word. John's throat tightened unexpectedly. Sam, teaching? Sam, smiling? It was like watching a man he'd never met wearing the same face as the employee he saw every morning trimming hedges without a sound. This version of Sam had weight. Purpose. A depth John had never considered worth looking for. A little girl raised her hand. "Mr. Sam, why do the plants come from your work? Isn't that stealing?" Sam paused, then shook his head gently. "No, sweetheart. Everything here is leftover stock. Things they'd toss out. And if something's just sitting around drying out, I'd rather put it where it matters." John swallowed hard. Leftover stock. Discard pile. Things no one would miss. His mind rewound to the inventory flags. The automated system cared about numbers, not context. It didn't know that half the bags of soil were overordered or that the pruning shears were duplicates left by a previous vendor. The system wasn't wrong. It just lacked the one thing John hadn't built into it. Human judgment. Inside, Sam continued working, kneeling beside a boy whose hands were still too small to hold the trowel correctly. He adjusted the boy's grip and said, "There you go. Strong hands don't matter. Gentle ones do more work." John felt that line like a slow punch. Gentle hands. He couldn't remember the last time he had seen his own as capable of gentleness. For 20 minutes he watched as Sam repaired a broken watering can with tape, passed out rolls from a paper bag he must have bought himself, and wiped dirt from a child's cheek with a care that made something inside John break open. Eventually, the kids drifted out with their parents, waving goodnight. The room dimmed. Sam stayed behind, gathering tools, checking routes, humming a tune so soft John couldn't catch the melody. Only when Sam slung the empty canvas bag over his shoulder and stepped toward the door did John move. He ducked behind a vending machine as Sam passed within feet of him, walking slowly down the cracked sidewalk toward the bus stop. John could have stepped out, could have said his name, could have asked 100 questions. But he didn't. He couldn't. His throat felt blocked by something sharp and unfamiliar, shame or maybe both tangled together. Instead, he followed from a distance again, all the way to the aged apartment building where Sam lived on the 3rd floor. The stair railing shook beneath the gardener's grip. His knees seemed stiff, but he kept climbing with the patience of someone who'd accepted pain as part of ordinary life. The hallway light flickered. John had never stepped inside a building like this in years. Sam disappeared behind a door marked 3C. John stood in the hallway alone, one hand against the wall, breath steadying. He wasn't sure what he felt, guilt for suspecting the man, sorrow for what he'd just seen, or the weight of a truth he had avoided for too long. He lived surrounded by people, and knew almost nothing about any of them. He left without knocking, but he knew he would return, because the story he thought he was following had only just begun. John returned to his mansion that night, but the house felt wrong, as if its polished floors and soft, engineered lighting were mocking him. He walked through the halls without really seeing them. The automation system chimed its usual "Welcome back, Mr. Harper," but the sound rang hollow. He bypassed the kitchen, bypassed his office, and went straight upstairs. He didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sam's hands, steady, worn, guiding a child's fingers toward the soil. He saw the peeling sign on that community room door, the cracked floor tiles, the children waiting with quiet patience for someone to show them how to make something grow. All while John lived in a world where throwaway items were simply replaced. The next morning, before the sun fully climbed out of the Texas horizon, John was already dressed and staring at the shed inventory again. He checked it line by line. The flags were still there, small, red, impartial. But this time he opened the vendor receipts, the delivery history, the internal notes Sam had logged across the years. Patterns emerged. Half the soil bags were replacements for shipments delayed in transit. The shears were duplicates ordered accidentally by a new assistant. The gloves were overstock from a landscaping project last season. Everything Sam had taken had either been labeled extra, damaged, or to be discarded. John sat back in his chair. There was no theft. There was no breach of trust. There was only a man who saw value where others saw waste. A man John had suspected, because it was easier to trust a system than a human being. That realization landed like a slow ache in his chest. By early afternoon, he was in his car again, driving toward the red brick apartment building. He told himself he was visiting to clarify the situation, but the truth weighed heavier. He owed Sam more than clarity. He owed him decency, respect, an apology. He climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. The hallway smelled faintly of fried onions and cleaning solution. The lights flickered in a rhythmic pattern that made the shadows jump. He stopped at the door marked 3C and knocked twice. No answer. Just as he was raising his hand to knock again, the door cracked open. A teenager, maybe 16, stood there, holding a stack of school textbooks. Her brown hair was tied back, her expression cautious but not unfriendly. "Can I help you, sir?" John cleared his throat. "Is Sam home?" She shook her head. "He's at the community garden. They're having morning hours today because the kids are off school." John blinked. "Kids go there in the morning." "Some don't have anywhere else to be," she said simply. "Mr. Sam keeps the place open when he can. He says growing something helps people feel rooted." Rooted. The word hit harder than he expected. "Are you his granddaughter?" John asked gently. "Not by blood," she said with a shrug. "But he's more of a grandfather than anyone I've got." The honesty in her voice made John hesitate. "Does he live here alone?" "Yeah," she said. I check on him sometimes. His back gives him trouble. And he won't let anyone help carry things, even when he should. John felt something twist inside him. Hard. He thanked her, turned, and walked slowly back down the stairs. The afternoon light stretched across the pavement like a long sigh. He sat in his car with the engine off, hands resting on the wheel, breathing in the stale warmth trapped in the cabin. Sam wasn't a suspect. He wasn't a problem to solve. He was a good man trying to hold a broken corner of the world together with worn-out gloves and leftover tools. And John had followed him like a criminal. That thought became unbearable. He turned the key, pulled out of the lot, and headed straight toward the community garden, not to hide behind a window this time, not to observe from the shadows, but to walk through the front door and face the man he had misunderstood for far too long. Because what he saw had already changed him. But what came next would break him open completely. The gate to the community garden creaked when John pushed it open. Morning sun filtered through the ragged chain-link fence, casting uneven shadows over rows of mismatched planters, cracked pots, and soil beds that had clearly been mended more times than they'd been built. And there, kneeling beside a wooden box held together with duct tape and hope, was Sam. His old cap shaded his eyes. His hands, steady despite age, despite pain, were gently patting soil around a tomato seedling. He wasn't humming today. He was focused, breathing slow, shoulders lifting with effort. Sam, John said quietly. The gardener looked up, surprise flickering across his face. Then something else, something unreadable settled in. Mr. Harper, he said, pushing himself to his feet. Didn't expect to see you here. John stepped forward, the air thick with everything he should have said days ago. I followed you, he admitted. Twice. Sam blinked but didn't step back. I figured someone would notice eventually. You shouldn't have had to worry about that, John said. And you shouldn't have been doing all this alone. Sam brushed the dirt from his gloves. Kids needed the space. Soil doesn't ask for money, just attention. And leftover tools. Well, I didn't think anyone would mind. I don't, John said quickly. But the system flagged it. I saw your name. And he hesitated, shame rising. I assumed the worst. Sam looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded once, slow and thoughtful. Systems can't see people, Mr. Harper. Only folks can do that. John's chest tightened. I saw the apartment, he said quietly. I saw the kids. I saw everything you've been doing. And I didn't know. I should have known. Sam shrugged gently. You've got a lot of world to run. Hard to notice the corners. But those corners matter, John said. You matter. These kids matter. And I've been blind to that. For the first time since he arrived, Sam's expression softened. Not completely, but enough. A group of children arrived then, running through the gate with backpacks bouncing, voices bright and hopeful. They greeted Sam like he was a hometown hero, crowding around him with questions about worms and watering cans. One boy tugged on Sam's sleeve. Mr. Sam, the pepper plant you gave me? It grew a flower. Sam laughed, a real laugh, warm and rich. Well now, that's the start of something good. John watched the interaction quietly, letting it settle into the hollow space he'd been carrying inside his chest for years. A space he'd filled with work, success, and precision but never people. After the kids scattered across the garden, John finally said what he had come to say. I want to help, he said. Not as your boss. Not because of guilt. Because this place deserves better. Because you've been doing a job 10 men couldn't. And because I've been walking past lives I should have been walking toward. Sam studied him, eyes narrowed just slightly. Helping how? John gestured around them. New tools. Repairs. A proper building. Funding. A program for the kids. A partnership if you'll let me. Sam didn't answer right away. He looked down at the soil on his gloves, then at the garden he had tended almost entirely alone. That's bigger than anything I've ever done, he said quietly. That's why we'll do it together, John replied. Finally, Sam smiled, not the polite nod he gave while trimming hedges, but something real, weathered, grateful. "Well," he said, "in that case, welcome to the garden." Over the next weeks, the community garden transformed. New lumber replaced the rotting frames. A small greenhouse appeared where only tarps used to be. Volunteers came, following John's lead and Sam's wisdom. Kids began planting more than they could count. Families gathered. Hope took root in the soil and in the people who touched it. And one afternoon, after watching a shy boy proudly hold up his first sunflower sprout, John felt tears burn behind his eyes. Not sadness. Not guilt. Something humbler. Something like finally seeing the world clearly. He turned to Sam. "You built all this," he said. Sam shook his head. "No. We did." Before we end this story, let me ask you something. Have you ever judged someone before understanding their whole story? Have you ever overlooked the quiet people who keep your life steady? Have you ever caught yourself trusting a system more than a human heart? Stories like this remind us that kindness often grows in the places we never think to look. If this touched your heart, please do me a favor. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss stories that open your eyes and move your soul. And let me know in the comments. What part of this story hit you the hardest? Have you ever met a Sam in your life? Your voice matters just like Sam's. And just like every quiet hero working behind the scenes.